that everybody in the organization uses the product. When our mothers were, having their kids, at that time there was information blackage because you did not know. Today there's information overload. You actually know too much. Community is something that now for us is the core of what we are doing. What we wanted was not just an ambassador, right? It was very clear that we wanted an investor plus ambassador. Being here's a brand to here's the brand. And most importantly, when it comes to kids' growth, right? Mothers are fairly uncompromising in nature.
Yes.
I feel that just to be able to capture the market, right? You don't always have to necessarily bleed. When you're entering tier 2, tier 3, it becomes even more critical to actually lower down the barrier to entry. The two things, growth and profitability, don't have to exist as separate things. They can actually be together. And most importantly, I think one thing is expecting the right channel to give you the right output. It's a branding channel, treat it like branding. Right? Unnecessarily tampering with it or expecting it to do some magical wonders not happen. The algorithm is what the algorithm is. So you have to be available omni-channel. I think that's not an option to not be available omni-channel. But if you don't have a good product, you won't get repeat.
Hi, I am Raghav Kansal, CEO and founder ET Media Labs. Today we have Shradha Tripathi on the show, who heads online revenue for Slurrp Farm, a brand that needs no introduction. Basically, there are three major sections that we will be going through. We'll take you. So first is around Slurrp Farm, particularly how the different stages of growth, what were the key challenges that we faced, what were the key learnings, and how do you anticipate as you move 10x from here. The other section will be around the hallowed topic around profitability of D2C brands, where we'll talk about, how do you see the brand moving towards profitability in years to come or in time to come. And last is more around D2C in general. A lot of queries, a lot of questions, especially for a lot of first-time founders who were watching this, in terms, what are the right ways to scale a brand. So that's how we'll go about it. Please feel free to add wherever you feel you need to change the flow. Let's move a little back. Today, Slurrp Farm, I think, almost is a very known brand. But when you started, it was relatively, as any new brand, it was very new. What was the initial few hurdles that you faced with Slurrp Farm in terms of basically going online and trying to sell, especially for a category which is very close to heart? No one want to experiment on day one with a new brand, so it would have been a very challenging ride from 0 to 1 million kind of revenue. So do you want to talk a little bit about that how do you counter different challenges that you faced?
So I think initial days, right, the first experiments of course are around product market fit, right? So when you are that early on in the journey, you're basically trying to identify your product, your pricing, your value proposition, your reason to buy. Do they all serve the market's requirement? Are you really filling in a white space, or are you really trying to dislodge a current player in the market? And you have to really found those hidden early adopters in those initial days. This category, like you said, is very close to heart. It's a category where nobody wants to experiment. So the idea was to actually drill down very deeply into why this product, into the reasons behind what made the two mothers start. So the brand story around the Made by Two Mothers was our strongest story at that point of time. The fact that this was also created by two mothers was very, very endearing to another mother to hear that this is not some large brand coming and telling me that here's another product from the portfolio. There's actually two mothers who did not find the right products on the shelf for their kids and hence started this to ensure that kids are eating the right, the healthy, the nutritious food today.
I think even something like their immediate network would be the first set of customers.
Absolutely. Friends and family always ends up being the first set of customers. They were the first set of customers. We then, after a significant period of time, started also putting marketing behind what we were doing. We did a little bit of offline, we did a little bit of online. We kind of experimented across the board. We did a lot of events where we were talking to mothers, lots of mothers who would come there. We would make them understand the value proposition, the brand.
And then one-on-one connect which the founders could make with the mothers propel the story forward basically. Because like you said, even with that white space, even with having a very strong brand positioning, we generally find it difficult to push or get the wheel moving just riding on marketing initiatives. But what I'm able to hear from what you're telling is that, you know, the founders, their own reputation, their own trust, their own pull help to basically get the wheel moving, at least in terms of customers starting.
Absolutely. And the founders would actually go to these individual events. They would stand at the stalls for the entire day, speak to so many mothers.
That itself creates a very big difference.
Yes, right. And it's about the fact that, you know, at a stall when you're picking up a product, it's not just anybody, but the founder of the company actually talking to you and telling you about the ingredients and why they started the brand. So when I had joined, we had done like an event at Kidzania, and one of the most common questions I had from everybody who came in there was, which are these two mothers? Right? I remember opening Instagram and showing it to people, ki ye rahi Meghna, this is Shorvi. Because it just created that personalized touch to say it's not just randomly made by two mothers. Here are the two mothers who built this, who are standing in front of you and talking to you.
Probably saying that we are using it for our own kids. That creates a very huge impact. Basically.
Huge. In fact, till date, right, one of the strongest things that I actually go and tell is that everybody in the organization uses the product. Right? And there are so many people that I know of who work in various sectors and who actually don't use their product because they're like, we know what's inside. But actually,
absolutely, you're right.
Our employee discount is the most heavily used coupon code on us. Because everybody in the company uses it for themselves, uses it for their kids. I have an 8-year-old.
Even in my network, who's a mom, is like all gaga about Slurrp Farm. I think word of mouth is the biggest marketing channel that is driving the current growth. Nice.
Absolutely.
Also, one thing which we have noticed, I think, probably continuing it from what you're saying, that, you know, they drove the engagement, they drove the sales as Meghna, Shorvi themselves talking about how they are using the product and, you know, how good it is, and the trust getting basically carried forward towards the first set of customers and beyond. Another thing which we see closely is a community that you have built basically, and that community has also grown over time. So was it an organic effort, or was it that, you know, like things which let's say Shorvi started, Meghna started, you found out ways to scale that, because beyond, as you went from 1 million to 10 million, it becomes difficult for founders to propel the brand forward because their time is limited at the end of the day. So was it one of those efforts where you say that these things have worked really well for us, how do we scale, and then started to build a community, or was it that it organically got built as the brand?
I think community was something that Shorvi always had in her mind, that there should definitely be a community around this, because it's a very key driver. I myself have worked at Baby Chakra earlier, which was a community platform for mothers, and the entire thing around a community is that, one, you need to understand what other mothers are going through. In today's, when our mothers were, you know, having their kids, at that time, there was information black age, because you did not know. Today, there's information overload. You actually know too much. And in everything is on Google, right? You're researching every single potty color on Google for your child.
But how do you trust?
How do you trust? And customized information, right? Yes. I remember when my daughter was young and I would look for food charts, I would get food charts from sites which were international. Now, I used to be like, मैं कहाँ खोजूं avocado? In Bangalore, sweet potato कहाँ से मिले 12 महीने? Right? So, customized information was always a challenge. Community is something that now for us is the core of what we are doing. If you would have seen the Anushka launch of Yes Mom community for us. The community will also be clubbed with a course which will be designed specifically for moms, and that will then help them give personalized information. See, because the two challenges that a mom has is, one, in this entire sea of information, finding information that's customized to her, her child's needs, her geographical needs, her demographic needs, her financial needs for that matter. And the second thing is having validation. So a lot of times around what she's doing is the right thing. More than anything else, it's also about validation. You know, your child skips 2 meals, you are hyperventilating at that stage. When you put that up in a community and 15 other mothers say, "Hamare saath bhi ho raha hai, koi baat nahi," and along with that another 30 who have bigger kids will be like, it's a phase, it will pass.
I think that's a better validation than even having doctors or medical professionals to say it's okay.
And see, for every small thing, you can't run to a doctor. Yes. So sometimes this community is very helpful. You need home remedies, you need to have a solve that I have this, what can I do in terms of finger food? And in fact, even doctors for that matter, right? On the community today, and I urge a lot of people to join this, you will also have live sessions by doctors. It also helps because irrespective of which location are you sitting in and whether you want to book a 1-hour session with a nutritionist or not, you can actually join the session, ask your questions and get your doubts clarified. So it acts as a one-stop shop, and 20 people might actually be having the same doubt. Instead of you separately going to a doctor, you could ask that question and even read somebody else's question and understand, oh, that's the way to solve it.
Coming to the next question in terms of, like you mentioned, we launched it with Anushka. So, what was basically, this is a very dilemma, a brand is in a dilemmic stage, especially when you're moving from 1 to 10 million and 10 and million and beyond. I'm not talking about brands which have already crossed 50 million in ARR. I'm talking about brands which are relatively just started to grow, just seeing the product market fit. Getting a brand ambassador at that point of time. Now, what are before even we talk about launching a particular community, but what were the thoughts in terms of, what are the challenges that you saw and why Anushka Sharma in particular to get on board for this and not any other celebrity? How was the process in terms of understanding which celebrity to go with? So was it all serendipitous or was it a very thoughtful strategy behind that?
See, I think very importantly, I'll first clarify that what we wanted was not just an ambassador, right? It was very clear that we wanted an investor plus ambassador, right? That the difference between the two is, see, anybody can come and endorse a brand.
Right.
It's a very easy thing. You have so many large brands and you have such large celebrities who endorse a brand, while you ask a common person and they know कि वो साबुन से नहीं नहा रहा है या वो सामान नहीं खा रहा है, right? The idea was to actually go with somebody who genuinely likes the brand, uses the brand, and therefore is not just going to be somebody who comes on screen, speaks and goes away, is genuinely going to be involved with the brand. So I think that was definitely there. And with regards to Anushka, I think all of these things matched perfectly, right? She had a kid at that time. If you see both Anushka and Virat maintain a very healthy lifestyle. They are very big endorsers of eating healthy. And I think that's what led us to finalize on Anushka as not just an ambassador but also an investor, to make sure that there were synergies which were on both sides, right? And you genuinely had a person who was using the brand, not just... And if you hear at the Yes Moms event, right, she even spoke about what are the favorite products from Slurrp Farm that a child eats, what's her go-to favorite product, right, and so on, right? It's a very big difference to somebody just coming and doing an ad film and walking off.
I think that is a very good point. Basically, the brand ambassador himself or herself using the product, having that conviction, which also is completely fortified by the fact that she is investor also with us. That's the
reason why she's an investor, right? This is not absolutely. Just I come, I endorse, I walk off.
And probably the core values also resonate well with her lifestyle and what she otherwise endorses.
Very well.
And how has that affected the trajectory for the brand in terms of numbers, in terms of business, basically?
Massively. I think we now internally call pre-Anushka, post-Anushka as our time periods, right? So we have pre-COVID, post-COVID, we have pre-Anushka, post-Anushka. I think our definitions have definitely changed.
Probably the entire funnel metrics would have improved significantly.
100%. I think many interesting things happened with Anushka coming on board, right? One was brand credibility, right? It really creates a difference from being here's a brand to here's the brand, right? I think that difference really comes about. Secondly, if you see the ad films or the content that has come out with Anushka, it has spoken about key issues that a mother faces, right? In the earlier set of ads that we had created with her, we spoke about real life situations where you buy something you buy a product, you buy noodles and you realize that this is not the healthiest, or you're really running behind your child in the morning to eat, not having a quick solution that is also healthy, and a constant struggle of a mother to just keep saying no, and empowering the mother to actually be able to say yes. So very real life situations that we picked up, and I think that really resonated with moms across the country when they saw those. And in the second leg also, if you see the content that we've done, have focused heavily around yes moms, right? The challenge that a mother faces, the struggle between eating yummy but it not being healthy and so on. So I think we picked up specifically the challenges that a mother faces in an everyday situation, and we used her to bring that about alive. That was, I think, very
Transforming for the brand.
Transforming the brand, and it was also something that across the funnel, right, really resonated. So whether you were doing a top funnel, middle funnel or bottom funnel with it, we even had our repeat customers come back and say that this is so true, like this is literally what happens in my house every day, where the child is running away.
The biggest driver in terms of success of such campaigns.
Yes.
Apart from I think the brand.
Correct. So I think that's definitely there. Which is the second aspect of having a brand ambassador on board like Anushka. And I think the third thing definitely is about, when you have such a large celebrity, you also do second layer of influencers and celebrities. And overall, the momentum multiplies. It's not just individual numbers that you are clubbing together or summing together. There's a multiplication effect that happens when that happens. So you do all things synergistically. You do a top funnel, you do this. The awareness index for us really took off. And then after that, honestly, we were in any case confident that the product was good enough to make the middle and bottom funnels happen.
True. And also, if I ask, like, what is that point where someone should consider that kind of investment into a brand ambassador, for example, as an investor or, getting them on board? What is that moment when, if for a D2C brand or for any brand in general, at which part of their journey they should think about bringing in a brand ambassador?
I personally feel that when you have the right product market fit, when you're very confident of your product, your repeat rates are strong, that your basic levers are all in place, right? And you're ready to fly. You should not have a situation where you decide to fly and your product or your distribution or your pricing, any of these things fall apart because you won't be able to capitalize, right? The minute you know that your building blocks are in place, I think that's when you are ready to jump up because you know that your scalability.
I think it accelerates almost every aspect of the business basically.
Absolutely.
And then so everything has to be fundamentally very, very strong, because the moment you take that velocity, if anything breaks, then that investment goes.
Then that investment goes for a toss, right? So all your building blocks are good and solid to go. You have a good distribution, you have the right product market fit, your pricing strategy looks okay, your repeat rates are good, you know that your AOV and LTV numbers are looking strong. I think that's when you can get more people in.
One question here is like a lot of brands struggle breaking into tier 2, tier 3 cities. Tier 1 is relatively still accessible, especially in D2C context and internet brands which has recently come up. Was it that the moment you got Anushka on board as a brand ambassador, your reach, your acceptance in tier 2, tier 3 started to get a very positive impact? Was there some movement in needle for tier 2, tier 3 cities as well?
I think we worked towards this in two phases. In the first phase of getting Anushka on board, we focused out on tier 1.
Okay.
Because we knew that there was some bit of momentum, but there was still a long way to go in capitalizing tier 1. In the second burst that we did with Anushka, we actually focused specifically on tier 2, tier 3.
Okay.
So we did vernacular cuts.
Yes.
We actually did separate and we followed up with, doing top funnel with Anushka, followed up by a middle funnel with a local celebrity.
Yes.
So we had local influencers for separate influencer for Kannada, separate for Malayalam, separate for Punjab, and so on and so forth. So our second burst focused on tier 2 as a market, tier 2, tier 3 as a market, and that's where we saw the numbers also really pick up from tier 2, tier 3. So it was a very planned effort to make sure that the first one focuses on tier 1 and the second one on tier 2.
By the time you had Anushka on board, you were still quite popular in tier 1 already at that stage. Tier 2, tier 3 was, because since we also work, so we've seen that tier 2, tier 3 was the major challenge to crack and get the things moving there.
Actually, to be honest, we also wanted to be prepared. Like I said, right? We wanted to ensure that with the first burst, we were able to go get right kind of distribution. A lot of things changed with tier 2, getting quick commerce access. So I think all the levers, by the time we did the second burst, all the levers were correct for us to even go behind tier 2. If we had done this earlier, probably wouldn't have worked out as well.
So if I have to summarize it, I think the right time to get brand ambassador on board is after you have everything set, be it product market fit, be it distribution channels, be it your tech part, be it the sourcing part, everything should be in place and you're ready to basically go for a unexpected growth trajectory. and that is the right time to have a brand ambassador. And one thing which you did really well was finding the right person whose core values resonated with Slurrp Farm, plus who was also invested in terms of not just saying that I'm invested, but literally invested into the brand. So that's a very good learning. Lastly, if I ask about, as you move forward from here, now probably we are targeting 100 million kind of an ARR or even more, even further. So like, what is the major challenge that you anticipate? Because so far the journey has been really good. Continuing it, the same acceleration becomes difficult as you go bigger and bigger. The rate of growth will get saturated, but still we are far, we would not have that bigger share that we'll be happy with the saturated growth. So like, what are the biggest challenges that you're anticipating as you move towards 100 million?
I think there's a lot of difference between the journey from 0 to 10, 10 to 100, and of course 100 onwards, right? So you've got your lowest hanging fruit. So the easy work is over.
Yes.
Right? The difficult work is starting off.
Yes.
So you now have to climb harder to get to the next set of consumers. One, of course, is identifying the next set of consumers, because you've got your early adopters. You now have to make sure that how do you get to your next set of consumers, and then once you identified this, solving for them. Are they tier 2? Are they tier 3? Are they tier 1? Do they prefer online? Do they prefer offline? What are the various places you need to be in? What is the price point or product that they are looking at? Expanding the portfolio accordingly. I think all of those become a fresh challenge once again, once you start to look at the number which is beyond 100 crore as such. And I think that's exactly where we are working at. And that then will bring with it, the lag of events to say, okay, fine. Therefore, from a marketing standpoint, which channel gets how much? How do we enter this entire world of, omni-channel attribution, for example, and so on. So, so all of these things kind of come into play as you step into the next set of growth. But the starting point is identifying who then your next circle of customers are going to be.
Do you think it will be more of a marketing play from here for Slurrp Farms, or more of a product play, basically? Would you be also innovating new products for this next layer of customers? Or would it be, that new distribution channels and marketing is where you would want to focus more?
I think it always has to be a combination.
Okay.
Right? If what was there earlier itself could have sufficed this, then it would have. Right? So it's a combination of both. It's a combination of getting into newer products and newer portfolios, as well as trying to actually, differentiate in terms of marketing and distribution from where we were earlier to become more expansive and sometimes even more, relatable to this set of consumers.
And that is where I think the challenge would be now, because as you go towards bigger consumer sets, I have seen that when we are trying to grow our business, you also start to find that white spaces are lesser and lesser as you expand your product portfolio. Getting a niche and reaching to a particular scale, and then when you move from 10 million to 100 million and beyond, I'm curious, like, do you find similar challenge here also, that you all of a sudden start to realize that a lot of needs are at least being, there are brands that are existing for a wider audience, basically? Or still you see that niche is big enough for you to grow to 100 million in terms of the overall positioning that Slurrp Farm has today?
I think I feel it differently here, right? I feel that Slurrp Farm is not operating in a niche. Right? The size of the kids' food market is a testament to, and the growing size of the kids' food market actually is a testament to that. What we have to do, right, in my opinion, actually is a little different. You have early adopters, like in the technology world as well, right? You have people जिनको आप बताओ नया फोन आया वो खुद ही जाके ले लेंगे, right? And then there are people जिनको आपको मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी कन्विंस करने में कि why do you need this? Right? It's the same thing I feel, right? The niche already exists. It's not that there are other brands in this segment which were already catering, and you want to enter and capture that. I think the brand distribution kind of remains the same between the two. What you have to do is you have to work harder to arrive, because the need for the consumer is a little different. I might want you at a kirana store next to my house, right? I might not be an online shopper at all, or I might want a product that, and just to give you an example, right? When we started off, we realized that there were certain customers who came to us and said, while you have an instant product, great, can you also give me a ready to cook product? I want to cook for my child. I don't want to always just add hot water and give this to my child. And that's where we launched our range of single grain and multi-grain cereals to say, okay, fine, here's a product, you cook it, you add whatever you want to it, we're giving you the base ingredient. We then actually solved for individual components. We said, here's the natural sweetener, here's the plain sprouted ragi, and you can go and make the product yourself. So your needs change, right, as you start to expand the market. But I think fundamentally, you still have like a huge game to play, and I don't think Slurrp Farm is operating in a niche market by any definition. It's a huge space to play.
And what is the competitive landscape when you start scaling from 10 to 100 million? Like, is it very unserved, or it is saturated, or somewhere midway?
See, it is served, right? There are definitely brands who are serving this space. The clear indication, however, that we have is that the value proposition that the consumer needs is not getting met. Right? They want a clean label. They want a product that meets things like there should be no artificial colors and no preservatives, and I should be able to read the back of pack and say everything that is written here I can understand it's in my kitchen. Right? So I think there are still brands that are there, and they're probably serving some percentage of the need that the consumer has. But I don't think that the market today is served by 100% on it answer.
So that also then becomes your differentiation somewhere, basically, as you grow even beyond and you see no other brand is solving it the way Slurrp Farm is currently solving it. In terms of the distribution channels, in terms of marketing mix, do you see a significant change as you expand, or do you feel a fair change would happen there? Any one or two levers you want to talk about?
I think offline.
Offline will become a major piece for you.
Offline is something that we are now heavily working towards. So I think that definitely becomes a play, and definitely tier 2, tier 3, right? There is significant population there who's very interested in the product, who's very aspirational, has the disposable income levels that you need. And most importantly, when it comes to kids' growth, right, mothers are fairly uncompromising in nature. So I think
you can't compromise with that. And also pricing will be a lever, like you do want to play around with that, or you want to keep the pricing strategy similar basically for tier 2, tier 3?
See, it varies by portfolio, right? We have various kinds of portfolio to solve the need for various kinds of people, right? And I think that's the way the portfolio has expanded. So we have products ranging from as low as 25 rupees going up to as high as 500 rupees. And therefore, to any consumer coming in, we give them a choice to say, depending on what you want, you can choose your products. And therefore, I think while product mix of what they purchase or what gets advertised might keep changing, but as a brand, the portfolio is fairly strong to address all segments of pricing today.
Okay, I think a fairly big market you're going after.
Yes.
And that brings me to the next question also. While there is such a huge opportunity to scale, and scale need investment, and with investment you need VCs to come in or funding to come in, and then the fight in terms of whether you want to grow aggressively or you want to grow profitably get started there somewhere. Mm-hmm. So what is Slurrp Farm viewpoint on that, or how are you looking at it? Because I am very sure this debate you would be having almost every week or maybe month, in terms of especially when you're leading marketing efforts, you need investment. So how do you go about planning, or how do you go about deciding whether you want to grow fast or you want to grow profitably, or how do you balance that piece?
I think that's a very that purely depends on what stage of the business are you in, right? There's a stage where you need to grow aggressively, and there's a stage where you need to grow profitably. And there's a stage where you actually need to do a bit of both, right? So I think we're now that we've done the aggressive phase with Anushka, when we got Anushka on board, I think the idea was to actually be very aggressive, because you had to utilize the fact that there's a brand ambassador or on the table, right? You really have to utilize that well and go all guns blazing. What we're now working towards, now that we have really, capitalized on this, we've created a fair bit of awareness in the market. Now I think what we're going to work on towards is capitalizing on that. And when you're doing that, you always have to look for profitable ways of doing that, because that's where you don't need aggression. You can be more stable, and you actually have to find niche and newer ways to be able to convert what you've created into profitable revenue now. So that's where we are today, and that's where we're going to focus on.
So a bigger focus on profitability basically as of now, at least for Slurrp Farms. So if I look at the overall market, I would still say there is such a huge room for basically expanding. And don't you feel, or maybe I wouldn't call threatened right word, but at least tempted to go and try and capture a bigger percentage really fast, even if that comes at the cost of profitability? Given that we'll keep the unit economics right for us, I'm not saying we tamper with our unit economics, but let's say even if we are bleeding and we bleed for another couple of years and we're able to dominate the market, and then we start basically becoming less expressive, aggressive on, let's say, marketing, for example, and especially marketing spends I will talk here, or basically less aggressive on increasing the portfolio, is still okay. But how do we resist that temptation to go all out and capture the market, given that we have such strong fundamentals in place and we have that opportunity now in front of us?
I think I feel a little differently here, right? I feel that just to be able to capture the market, right, you don't always have to necessarily bleed, right? At a certain stage, yes. When you have an entire aura of awareness created, right, when you're sitting on a very heavy top funnel for you, your now next step is to work your middle and bottom funnels properly. Make sure that your repeats are strong, your LTV is strong, which can be very well done profitably, right? And capturing that section, we just spoke about the fact that this section now you have to work harder to get. Now, the work harder doesn't always require you to throw money at the problem, right? The work harder could also be smarter ways of trying to communicate your value proposition, smarter ways of trying to actually get the consumer to come and experiment with the brand. So just to give you an example, we launched trial packs, right? Now, what that did was, for a large set of consumers who were on the edge about the brand, I've heard great things, but I don't know, बच्चे को पसंद आएगा कि नहीं, क्या पता बच्चे ने नहीं खाया तो. We gave the mother an option. Here was a 50-gram pack. Here's a pack at a very low price point. Come, enter. Because the thing was, we were very confident of both sides of the funnel. We were very confident that there's a fair share of awareness and equity that the brand has created, which will get the mother to experiment. We were very confident that the product is very good, which means I will automatically get repeat, right? And therefore, the only thing that we have to do is lower the barrier. How do I make sure that the mother enters the brand without having to spend 300 rupees at the start, but actually can she enter the brand at 60 rupees? Experiment, understand, see the difference, see that the child has accepted the food, has liked the food, and come back and buy for more. So there are other ways to actually do this, right? When you're entering tier 2, tier 3, it becomes even more critical to actually lower down the barrier to entry. So similar such hacks can be brought about in place to try and get this consumer to enter the brand, and then work towards how do you expand, how do you make sure that the person moves from a 60 rupee to 300 rupees, from 300 to 600 and so on. It doesn't always have to be a play about can I show more ads, or can I just do like a massive discount to get the mother to enter. This is one example of another way of doing this. I think the two don't have to I would say exist in two different universes and not get married to each other. The two can actually work hand in hand. And the other interesting thing is that a lot of this gets solved by distribution as well. A lot of the times we don't realize, but being available is a very critical path to save.
Yes.
Right? And that does not end up sucking up like anything massively from you. Once you hold that awareness and you're available in the respective channels, you'll definitely see the difference. When we listed on quick commerce, we listed with some 2-3 SKUs. And the growth has been so good that we've moved up to 8 SKUs, 15 SKUs, right? So I think that itself will try to cover up the distance for you. And we can definitely move towards a path to profitability. But I don't think that the business at the stage where we are should not have one eye very strongly on profitability. It's very critical that while you don't let go of your aggressive growth goal, you keep profitability in mind, and that will help you marry the two together. They don't, like I said, the two things, growth and profitability, don't have to exist as separate things. They can actually be together.
I think as long as you have a high LTV, you can have luxury of saying that. That has to be a must.
100%.
One thing which brands do get wrong is that when you're doing it on a lower LTV, everything starts to fall apart. So you build the top funnel, you have a good LTV. Now you need to basically just reduce the barriers to get people to start testing and trying your product, which is relatively a simpler problem to solve. Relatively, not a simple problem by any means. Compared to with a lower LTV product with a lower stickiness, everything becomes difficult. The entire game becomes difficult there.
I think repeat rates are a very, very strong driver, right?
Yes.
And we've been mapping our repeat rates across all channels, right? It's not just a D2C mapping. We map our repeat rates across all e-com channels, the ones who share data, the ones who don't share data also, we are aggressively asking. We aggressively ask the channel partner कि आप और कुछ बताओ या नहीं बताओ, repeat rate बता दो आपको.
So does the repeat rate varies across channels? Just curious.
Not a lot actually. We have very strong repeats across all channels.
Not a very strong variance also probably, because it should not vary by channel.
It does not vary by channel. It's the frequency. See, for us, because we are food, right, our AOV numbers will keep varying.
Yes.
Right? That's massively different. You're buying off Instamart, you know that you can again place an order tomorrow, right? Your frequency of order from a quick commerce channel is going to be as quick as, maybe every third day. Your frequency of buying from maybe an Amazon Fresh or a Big Basket once in 15 days. Your frequency of buying from a core channel could be once in 20 days or 30 days and so on. Depending on that, your AOVs will keep changing. But I think repeat rates and LTVs should continue to be strong.
So that's a more function of the brand and the product basically.
A product that has a shelf life number on it, right? Especially kids' food. People are even more cautious. Even if my consumption is 3 boxes in a month, I will buy one at a time. फिर वो fresh वाला लेंगे, right? So that doesn't go away, and that's the game, right? So to be honest, that's the way a consumer behaves. Hence, the focus on repeat rate and LTV is where our minds are, and I think that's the game that should not, in any case, get challenged.
In both the cases, LTV will hold true. At the end of the day, I think that's the way to win.
Correct.
Because that has a what we have also seen with a lot of brands is higher LTV has a very multiplier effect on your CACs also. Because the word of mouth is there, the brand awareness spreads faster, the user is using on a regular basis, and that helps to fuel growth profitably.
Absolutely.
Moving forward, and next big question here is in terms, and my favorite question also, how do you see, like you said, you have built a very good top of the funnel and you have solved for LTV, and now basically you need to just solve for ensuring that you're available or reducing the barrier basically, and the more you solve for that, which is relatively less costlier problems to solve compared to, let's say, building the top of the funnel, for example. So now when you move forward from here and and the journey that has been, how do you work upon splitting the budget, especially from marketing perspective, between branding and performance? Like that's a very big dilemma for D2C brands, especially who are above 1 million ARR, moving to 10 and then beyond that. So how have you gone about it? How managing it so far, and how do you plan to do it moving forward?
I think one is a fundamental shift in mindset to say that the two are not separate. Right? The two are together, part of one budget.
True.
The minute you start to separate them, you also start to have unrealistic expectations. I have worked in the agency side of the business earlier on, and one constant thing I used to have is where people would give me CPM budgets and then say, but conversion rate खराब था. But आपका objective कुछ और था, right? You were trying to get awareness. So how are you measuring conversion rate?
Branding budgets को देखा जाता है, इसको भूल जाओ. But that's very difficult to accept as a brand basically. कैसे भूल जाए, बहुत बड़ा spends है.
Right? I think in today's digital world, first of all, right, the gap between branding and performance has really lowered down.
True.
First of all, right? So your branding translates into conversion very quickly, first of all. Secondly, I think one gets used for the other. Like the barrier to say that this is branding and this is performance should really lower down, and it should depend on what you're trying to solve. So if, for example, you want to crack open a market in Kerala, right? You're trying to enter Kerala and you really want to focus there. You will have to spend on branding, right? On the other hand, you could be fairly mature in Maharashtra, which means that in Maharashtra, you can continue to focus on performance and one can subsidize the other. So the performance here in Maharashtra can go and subsidize for what you're trying to do in Kerala. And this can even happen at a channel level, right? So let's say you're trying to do an experiment this month on Amazon, your D2C can subsidize for that. So your D2C can focus this month higher on the repeat customer while you do a CAC or a customer acquisition there. So we have those months, right? For example, you have the 26th January and 15th August sales, you have the Prime Day sales. In those months, we specifically go behind that channel and we say we are going to lower down and not unnecessarily go and enter a competition bid with Amazons and Flipkarts of the world and sit tight on D2C, wait for that phase to get over and then go back and work on that. So I think it's important to split it by channel. It's important to also split this by saying what you're doing where. And most importantly, I think one thing is expecting the right channel to give you the right output. It's a branding channel, treat it like branding, right? Unnecessarily tampering with it or expecting it to do some magical wonder not happen. The algorithm is what the algorithm is. And if it's a non-branding channel, then go full guns blazing on performance on that channel. And literally with a very close eye, just map on ROI and not anything else. Don't look here or there. Just needle set on ROI means ROI.
And also, have you seen with Slurrp Farm, particularly as you have increased your branding spends, or if you have been consistent with your branding, over time your performance efficacy starts to increase. Not only the efficacy, but also the scalability. We have observed that with a lot of brands that depending upon how big a brand is or how well known a brand is, I'll put it that way, your efficacy and scalability both for performance varies. So one of the ways to look at it could be that branding, while we are consistently building our top of the funnel and we are not stepping back from it. And I like your idea where you are saying we reduce certain spends from branding, put it in performance, or let's say in a particular geography we are focused on branding and from other geography focused on performance. So the machinery overall starts to look big good. But basically when you start implementing it on ground, how do you on day-to-day basis, if I ask, or month-on-month basis, how do you actually decide that? In theory, this works really well where you are constantly doing a lot of branding and your performance is scaling. And what we have also seen brands do is that as the performance starts to give a particular ROI, they keep on scaling that because you're getting that money back, you're able to measure that. And branding, they keep consistent. And as the brand grows, the branding budgets grows. So that is one approach towards solving for it. But the way I hear you from Slurrp Farm perspective, you are basically making these decisions much more dynamically. Now what happens there, the challenge that we see, or probably on weekly, monthly, or let's say even quarterly basis, it becomes very difficult to dynamically move the numbers and the budgets because relatively the clarity is less on the branding spends outcomes. Lot of ways to measure it directionally, but still there is no one-to-one kind of mapping. So how do you redistribute the budgets on an ongoing basis?
See, I think one very important thing to stop doing is most people look at branding spends and only correlate that to D2C performance, right? Yes. You have to look at that at a business level.
Absolutely.
Right? So the minute you start to do that, the situation becomes crystal clear. If I'm doing something in Kerala, the reason could be that my offline is going stronger in Kerala. And therefore you need brand support to do that. Right? It does not always have to just correlate to your D2C website. And we treat the two separately. So while performance, of course, while it will also have multi-channel attributions at the end of the day, but lesser so, because your endpoint is your website. So while performance activities is mapped directly to the website, I think branding for us is always structured strategically to what the business wants to do in the quarter. And it's divided on the basis of that. In this quarter, if these are the 5 goals that the business has, then branding will work towards that, right? While performance will specifically look at what the D2C website needs.
It can be a very strong numbers game when it comes to performance, where to put money, which channel to put, which geography to put. So that becomes purely data driven or numbers driven. In branding, it becomes a business strategy.
Overall business strategy driven, right? And see, branding measurements are very difficult, right? So that's what I was trying to tell earlier also, right? The minute you start to microanalyze this, you will have a problem. So branding budgets therefore should, if you're doing a macro spend, you should compare to the macro number to say, I spend this much, did my revenue go up this much overall as an organization, right? Whereas when you're doing micro spends to say, this is my PMAX budget, this is my Amazon AMS budget, this is my Meta budget, then measure it at the channel level. And measure
And
your
probably you can have a
growth.
secondary metrics for each channel in that case to optimize that on day-to-day
And
basis.
that number actually has a far higher level of variability, right?
Yes, yes.
You will literally do this on a weekly basis.
Correct.
To say, I'm increasing spend on Amazon, I'm decreasing spend here, or between Meta and Google, this is what I'm doing. This week I have an affiliate experiment, I'll do this. So that is even more dynamic in nature.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is how we also work. We make primary metrics as the macro factors to monitor, and then secondary metrics which you can do on day-to-day basis. Probably that helps to at least have clarity. What are we trying to achieve? And also when you talk about, like you said, D2C versus omnichannel, in omnichannel again I'll talk marketplaces and offline. So we today have at Slurrp Farms, we have a fair share of spread across all these channels. How is there any particular approach that you're following in terms of, like having the first question is like in terms of what is an ideal mix for you as a brand to what is it that you want to see happening over the next 2 to 3 years? I see that currently we are more graviated towards online and D2C piece. Offline journey, we are just getting started. So in terms of the overall health of the business, overall moat of the business to make it much more defensible, is it very necessary for a brand to look at omnichannel as a strategy in a long-term strategic lever, or it's okay to be purely focused on D2C space?
I think in food, I would say it's important to be omnichannel. Right? Because like I take myself, right? I am a working professional, I'm a mom to an 8-year-old. I have at least 10 D2C brands from whom I buy food from. And if I have to go individually to each website and shop, very different. But when I'm exploring a brand and I want to understand, should I buy this brand? I definitely, for the first 2-3 instances, will want to go there. But after that, my convenience is, can I find this where I'm buying everything else? So if I'm buying from a convenience store, can I find this in that place? If I'm buying from a marketplace, I'll be like, can I buy this from there? Or there could also be a situation where I love buying from the site. And then in that case, can the site give me everything in one go? Can the site actually build a good enough bundle that lasts the entire month for me? I think a food section, right, you really have to be omnichannel because the consumer does not have a lot of time. And it's not something that, like clothes shopping that you do once in 3 or 4 months. This is something like yeah, exactly, right? Every week you will probably do grocery shopping. Every 15 days you will do like your bigger item shopping in terms of atta, dal, chawal and stuff like that. Most channels of offline and online marketplaces will tell you that frequency of the consumer is once in 2 weeks, right? Even at the worst. So you have to be available omnichannel. I think that's not an option to not be available omnichannel. To start off with, see, when you're, like I said, when you're doing a product market fit and some of your other building blocks, you can choose to be digital only because digital responses are faster. So you learn faster. If something's not working, you'll get to know fast. If something's working, you'll get to know fast. Your feedback loops are very strong. But once those, like I said, those initial things are solved for, you pretty much have to be everywhere where the mother is. I mean, we are also present in play areas because we are like while store is one place, a play area is where a child is playing for an hour and the mother is waiting. And there's sufficient time for her to actually look around and find the product and say, okay, here's a great product, be enough time to read the back of pack and actually decide to make a purchase. So I think solving for wherever your consumer is, like all the avenues that a consumer can potentially buy from, is super critical in food.
And any particular mix that you see, basically any mix that you're chasing, or you're just being wherever possible and the mix evolve itself?
See, definitely offline, now that we are very sure of the building blocks, I think offline is something we are heavily focusing on. Similarly, availability on quick commerce, for example, right, is something critical. We're seeing a lot of data shift happen towards quick commerce. So that continues to be a focus. But having said that, D2C for us continues to be the entry point to the brand. Because this section is not an impulse buy section. Mothers are very well planned, they're very well read, they're very well researched before they make a purchase for their kids. And therefore, they want to actually read the brand story. They want to actually interact, have a two-way communication. And your D2C site is the only place where that is possible. Right? No other channel can give you a two-way communication methodology. And therefore, it's the most uninhibited brand story that you hear. It's the only channel with two-way communication. So I think from a mixed standpoint, each channel ends up feeding to the other channel. right? So, I mean, we used to hear the D2C feeds, the large Amazon big baskets of the world, acts as lead gen for them, right? I'll speak to somebody in quick commerce and he's like, people buy from Amazon and then they repeat from us. So that's now becoming a lead gen for quick commerce. We are hearing some interesting things about when we're speaking to some customers for Millet, which is our second brand, that we discover online but we repeat offline. So there are lots of mixes in the ecosystem in terms of
consumer journey is very complex, making it more difficult for marketeers.
Correct. So that has become supremely complex, but I think that's where it gets interesting, and we'll evolve as the market evolves.
Not sure whether the AI models are evolving fast or the consumer journeys are changing.
I'm sure AI will catch up.
Yes. Cool. Okay, that brings me to my last question. I have almost kept it more free flowing, so maybe miss few of these questions. But when we are working, or let's say when a new D2C founder, or maybe someone who has been in the journey for a couple of years, since you also interact with a lot of D2C founders, what are the common mistakes, common challenges that you see that could have been avoided, which basically makes or breaks the brand? Like, what are the topmost 2-3 problem statements that you have seen with the founders who have just started in D2C space?
I think one definitely is product market fit, right? We were speaking to a couple of people in marketplaces and they said that a lot of brands with now, Shark Tank and some of these things happening get a huge push in terms of the initial jump. But if you don't have a good product, you won't get repeat. So there are lots of levers to get that sudden increase in awareness now. But to sustain it, you require a great product.
And scaling before that becomes a big challenge.
100%, right? So I think jumping into this without understanding the right product market fit is definitely one big thing. And secondly, I don't know, this is a personal thing that I feel might not be corroborated by the industry, is I really feel strongly that in this D2C space of these new age brands, right, each story is very different, right? So while we can try to definitely learn from everyone else's journeys, but each journey has to be carved very differently. And what has worked for somebody you might consider similar might not end up working for you. So having the consistent vision and the gut feel and strength to say, this is my journey and I'll play it this way. And it doesn't matter if someone else has done it differently. Because at the end of the day, the reason you started a business is because in any case you felt different, right? You felt that there was a need in the market and you could do something differently. That's why you started. So no point of losing that in the middle and saying, "Sab ye kar rahe hain, to mujhe bhi karna chahiye." Sticking to your own story is something that I feel. I've after my first stint, I've only worked for startups, and this is the interesting thing that I felt, that a lot of the startups which have done very, very well, there are lots of things that they've done which were very different from what the market expected them to do or what the ecosystem was doing at that time. And I think the reason why they were able to grow at that pace was not by copying what somebody else was doing, but by actually being bold enough to say, my story, my way.
Finding enough people to resonate with that.
Yeah.
True. That's very interesting. I think product market fit is like something relatively obvious, but the second piece is, again, I've also seen a lot of founders losing out on their original story as they move forward.
100%.
A few years down the line and becoming what they started working against in the first place. True. So that's very interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for a lot of deep insights into D2C, Slurrp Farm, into how you have grown this brand, and all the best as you move from here towards a growth to 100 million. We hope that Slurrp Farm achieves that as in next few years.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shradha.
Lovely interacting with you.
Same here. Thank you so much.